What is up? Daniel here with the Virtual Robotics Studio, and in this video we are going to try to build and assemble our bumpers. So bumpers, there's a lot of specific rules in the manual. I'll try to call out the ones that are important, but you should read the manual section on bumpers before doing this. And don't skip this video. You will need the bumpers when you get to the competition to be able to compete, but also this is going to add some weight low down on our robot. We found out in the first programming video that the robot's still pretty tippy until we add more weight, some more ballast down at the bottom. So this will help with that. And when we go to do autonomous programming, if the robot is going to crash into stuff, it's nice to have a set of bumpers on the robot. Also, you can have a group working on building your bumpers while your programming team is working on even the last video or the next video, which is going to be some autonomous mode programming. All right, you need a lot of stuff for the bumpers. There is the bumper kit that I believe came in the rookie kit of parts, so we're going to be using just some of the parts from that. These are the front and back mount brackets from that kit from Andy Mark. There are some long bolts that were in there and wing nuts that go with those. And I think you get some wood screws. These are number 8, 3/4 inch long wood screws. Okay, then from Home Depot, we're going to add some more of these corner brackets that we're going to use to kind of hold the wood pieces together. We need some staples. I think the staples can be just about any length. It's going to work fine. I have 3/8 inch long ones, but I think half would be fine. You could probably go even smaller than 3/8, 5/16, whatever. We've got some just regular 1032 nuts. These are not nylock nuts. And we're going to use that to hold the bolts on the frame of the robot. So the bolts will always stay attached to the frame of the robot, which will make it easier to change the bumpers. Some more corner brackets. These are just angle brackets, 90-degree angle brackets from Home Depot. They come with screws. These are actually number 6 screws, I believe. And so we have another set of some number 6 screws that'll help us attach these corner brackets on. And the smaller screws here is nice because we want them to sit kind of as flat as possible on the back so that the bumpers fit nicely around the frame of the robot. All right, also, you'll need some bumper fabric. I think we got this from RoboPromo. I'm not 100% sure, but so this fabric is already cut to length. You're going to end up needing, I believe, an 18-inch wide strip of this fabric. You can get kind of any durable stuff. I think the manual calls out a few types, so if you're running to a fabric store nearby to pick it up, start there. Andy Mark also sells bumper material, so you got lots of options for where to get it. Now, you will need a red set of bumpers and a blue set of bumpers. So on the field, it's a 3v3 match. And 3 of the teams are going to be on the red alliance, 3 of the teams are going to be on the blue alliance. And basically the bumpers is what the audience uses to know which alliance you're on. So if you're wearing red bumpers, you're part of the red team. If you're on blue bumpers, you're on the blue alliance. So you need to have 2 different sets of bumpers. Or there are some online examples of how you can make reversible bumpers. I'm not the biggest fan of reversible bumpers, but if they're done well, they can work. So we will make 2 sets. I'm only going to make 1 in the video. It'll be the same process except use the other color fabric to make your second set. On the bumpers also you need team numbers, and there are a variety of ways you can do this. You can get number patches and sew them on. I think there are some companies that sell iron-on numbers, so you can line these up, put them in place, and iron them on. I think the suggestion in the Everybot instructions is to use these stencils that we got from Home Depot, and you can use spray paint or I guess I'm told this Flex Seal White is going to work well and stick nicely to the bumper. So that's what we're going to try using. Also, you will need pool noodles. So the pool noodles is what actually makes the bumpers squishy and protects the robot. So for pool noodles, you need 2.5-inch pool noodles. I think they have to be between 2.25 and 2.75. So don't get pool noodles that are huge or too tiny. You'll have to measure them when you buy them. Andy Mark sells them. There's a few vendors online that sell them. So if you're in an area that it is winter currently and you can't find pool noodles, go online and see what you can find. All right, the one tool that we are going to need to be able to do this that we haven't used before and you might not have around is a staple gun. There is, I think it's the Arrow one that has a spring that you just squeeze and it's hard to use. That one I think is like 20 bucks. That works fine. You're going to get tired, but that's okay. This one was a little bit more, a little over 30. But it is electric, so you just pull the trigger and it pops it for you. So I would recommend this if you have the extra $10 or $15 in your budget. I've also got some tape, and I'm just going to use this masking tape to lay stuff out. A better thing might be there are fabric pens that you can put on, and I think you can heat those up and they'll disappear. So you can use those to sort of align where your bumpers are going to sit and where the numbers need to go. but I'm going to use some tape and just a regular old Sharpie. All right, I think that's all the parts. Let's get rid of what we, oh, also, one more part. We are going to need some plywood, and you want 3/4 inch thick plywood. And I would suggest buying some of the nicer grade plywood because it's going to be easier to work with. Now, that's all the parts we need. So we're going to clear this out. We're going to bring the plywood in. We'll start with making cuts for that. But before we go, as always, special thanks to Argosy and Everybot. Okay, we need to cut strips of this plywood out. And I guess we probably want to cut this way. So when we're done, the grain is running more along the board than against it. I don't think it matters too much, but I think it'll be a little bit stronger that way. Anyway, we need strips to make our bumpers out of, and those strips need to be 4.625 inches thick. So we're going to be making strips that are 4 5/8 wide. And I think the recommendation is that you don't let them be less than 4 1/2. So if you have to cut it a little bit long, that's going to be okay. But don't cut it too much too short. So let's go ahead and mark this out. So 4 5/8 will be right here. I'll do another mark somewhere else. Get our square on that. All right, that looks pretty good. All right, and let's just double check everything. 4 5/8. 4, and that is significantly less than 5/8. All right, let's try one more time. So I'll mark it with the tape measure this time. We want to be here. And on this side, we are good. My second mark maybe was not so good. So let's try that. Okay, that looks better. Yep, and that is okay. Yep, we can work with that. All right, then the idea is we're going to cut this strip. So this piece is what, 48 inches long. We're going to need, let's see, I think we need 2 pieces that are 23.8 something. So we can fit 2 pieces out of this. Then we're going to need 2 more pieces that are each 28 and I think 5/8 long. So we won't be able to get 2. So we're going to have to cut 3 strips of this size. Again, when you're doing this, you need to cut 6 strips of this size because you need a set for the red bumpers and a set for the blue bumpers. And then I think if I use my saw here, I've got the circular saw again to make this cut. If you have a table saw, that's obviously better. You'll be able to make a nice straight cut there. But I think what I can do with the circular saw is I can actually clamp this down and use it as a track. But I think, let me see, when I put this up, if I want my thing to be there, I think it's about 1.5 inches. Yeah, it looks like it's 1.5 inches. So I think if I make another line that is 1.5 inches past this first line, then I'll be able to clamp this down and use it as a guide for my saw to hopefully get a nice straight cut. So there's an extra 1.5 inches. Over here, we'll do an extra 1.5 inches. 1/2 and 1 inch. So if we line up on that, that should hopefully let us do a nice straight cut. And that looks pretty good to me. So let's get a couple of these clamps out here. And if you don't have the giant T-square or drywall square, you can just do this with any old piece of metal as long as it's 48 inches wide. And let's take a look. that looks like it puts me pretty much right on the line. All right, so to make sure the table is not where I'm cutting, let me pull this a little bit farther out. And then we are going to go ahead and just rip this board. Okay, that'll work. So I have 3 of these done. You need 6 of them because you're making 2 sets of bumpers and I'm only making 1. All right, and I guess now I actually have to get the vacuum out to clean this up, and then we'll come back and start cutting them down to length. All right, so we have our 3, or in your case, hopefully 6 boards cut down to 4.625 or so. And now we're going to cut them to length. So the first ones we're going to do are, we need 28.625. So 28.625. So that's 28 5/8. Put a mark here. Now they're short enough, I can just use this square. And our remaining bit is not any useful to us. It's too short. So, all right, let's see. We clamp this on the table so it doesn't move on me, and then we'll make that cut. And this one's shorter, so I could go ahead and clamp the square on here, but just go ahead and make the cut. So this one is 28 5/8. So this is 28.625. Now we need a second one of those. My plywood is definitely bowing a little bit, but I think we're going to be okay. 28 5/8. 28.625, 28 5/8. All right, let's mark it. And cut this. Let me get a little bit more off the table here. All right. We should be good on that one too. This is another long side, so 28.625. And now this one we're going to get 2 pieces out of, hopefully. So this one we need, see, it says 23.8125. So 23 inches and what is that, 13/16. All right. So 23 3/4 plus a 1/16. All right, but that time, that's the piece I want. 23 and 13/16, sure. All right, so this is our short one. This is the 23.8125. And we need one more of those. Measure from this side, 23 and 3/4 plus a 16th. All right, and let's cut this one off. All right, so we have 4 pieces. They should go together this way to make a bumper and hopefully fit on our robot. All right, let's go ahead and sand these edges down a little bit, and then we'll test them on our robot frame to make sure they're the right size, and then we'll start connecting them together. All right, now that we're hopefully done sawing, I'm going to vacuum one more time. We'll bring the robot out and see if these are the right size. All right, let's put these around the robot and make sure they fit on the outside of the frame. We're going to have some pieces that go on the inside that we have to watch out for, but if we're not even close now, well, no point in continuing. So the shorter ones should go on the front and back, and they should stick out enough that the longer ones will match up on the side like this. And also, I don't know if your boards are as warped as mine, but I'm going to put it so that they bow away from the robot, so I get a little bit more clearance for everything to fit. You should see a little bit of space all the way around the whole robot, because we need to put some brackets on the inside. And yeah, I mean, I think that looks pretty close. So we'll have to give it a try then. All right, back up to the table. See, these are looking pretty good. You need to make sure that the short one goes past and the long one sits down on top of it. And then we can try to line this up. We want to just line up the outsides here. And we're going to attach this bracket on one side, because you can see this bracket, we do have room for it to adjust. But we are going to want to make sure that when all is said and done, we are square on these 2 boards, or as square as we can be. So the other way is if I do it this way, that'll also work. You know what I think we're going to do? I think we're going to clamp this board onto the table so it doesn't move on us. I need to leave myself enough room for the other board to go upright next to it. Oh, and which way is this one curving? Okay, this way. I want the curve towards the inside if possible. And that's where we want to put it. If we had a long enough clamp, that would be great, but we don't. Okay, and we have to be careful because of the curve. All right, I think we just got to go ahead and attach something here. So we'll do the inside bracket, I think, instead first. And let me actually adjust this. Or actually, I'll do it on this side of the table. I think that will be less blocking everything. All right, so we'll end up clamping that down too when it's nice and flush with the end. You need to be flat or a little bit, and you need to be pretty much flat with the end of your board. And again, which way is this bent? So this is the curved side, so I'm going to do that. And this, I guess, is what we're looking to do. So I'm just going to try to center this as much as possible. Let's throw another clamp on here. Okay, I think that's going to work. Let's go ahead and attach this down now to this board first. And the way to do that, at least according to the package, is to drill a 5/64 pilot hole first. I think that was on here. Yeah, 5/64. So I have a 5/64 drill bit that we will drill with first. And then I'm going to screw it in. You can screw it in by hand if you have to. If you have a little Phillips driver, you can switch back and forth. If you have two different drills or a drill and a driver, then you don't have to switch back and forth, and that will save some time. All right. So on this one, right, you have to be careful because the table's there. So I'm going to drill in only a little bit, which is going to be deep enough for the screw. You can also pull this off the edge of the table if you need to. And you can probably get away without the pilot hole entirely, but the purpose of the pilot hole is to help keep the wood from splitting when we drill into it. So then I'm going to drive these two screws in. All right. And then this can move for a second, and let's do the other two. And for this one, I will go off the edge of the table because now I can. Yeah, but you can see we're not going out the other side. Two more screws. Okay. And now we want to bring this one up to it. And get connected. So let's go ahead and clamp. I guess we'll clamp on one side. Like that. Make sure you're flat on the table and your top and bottom surfaces are as even as possible. My boards are a little bit different width, so I'm just making sure that they, I'm a little bit past on both sides here. All right, and that looks about all we can do, so let's go ahead and drill these holes. And it's okay if you drill through the board. We're going to cover up that side anyway. So that one I drilled through. That side, the outside is going to be covered by the pool noodles and fabric and everything, so nobody's going to see it. Okay. Then I guess we have to take the clamp off and do the other two. All right, so that's the first corner done. Then I think what we're going to want to do is let's do the other side of this board. We'll do the same way. Get those extra screws in here. So we need another short one. And I'm making sure that it is bowed the right way, or the way I want it to be bowed. And this is going to end up attaching here, sitting on the table. Okay, so first let's go ahead and take this to the edge of our board. And when that's nice and even on the edge of the board, and you can use the square for that if you need to. Okay, and or just by feel is probably fine. So that seems pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and clamp it together. Cool. And then we're going to do the same thing. Let's attach this side. And I am trying to drill in the center of the hole of the bracket. It does help because the screws can pull your bracket a little bit out of position if you're not careful. But this bracket will also, it will also bend a little bit. So if it's not perfectly in position, we should still be okay. All right, last hole. Okay, then the other short one. I'm finding which way it's curved, if it is curved. If yours is not curved, don't worry about that step. And for this one, I think I'm going to want to clamp this one to the table because it's so, mine is so warped here. So we'll throw a clamp on this way first. Turn it so there's still plenty of room for the other one to sit on the table as well. So this way. Okay, and once again, I'm just sort of aligning the tops and bottoms by feel, and we'll clamp it on. Pretty good, pretty good. All right, same thing. And you might see I keep grabbing from the same pile of screws. All of my extra screws are the same size that came in these packages, so I'm just not keeping them separated. All right. I guess before we go even farther, let's see if this even fits. How are we looking when we drop this on the robot? Let's come around to this side. Okay, so a little snug, but I think we're going to end up spreading the other ends out a little bit. So I think we're okay. I think that's fitting. All right, cool. Let's do the last side then. And let's see. I kind of think if I put, right, because this is going to go on the inside here. And you can see that we'll do a lot to spread the box back open, so that's where it was tight. Yeah, I guess we put this. I guess we put this together, and then we'll start. Let's see. First of all, that is the way that it is bowed. Good. And I guess what I'm going to do is I will take this whole thing, and I'm going to flip it up like this, and then bring it down to match this one. Except we are going to have to kind of clamp one at a time so that we can have this flat, so we're kind of dealing with that bow as much as possible, trying to get it to come back out flat. So we'll probably let's see, if I clamp this down to the table and we slide this bracket in. Okay, this is in basically and not moving, and it's down on the table. And if I wanted to keep this from moving, I can't really clamp across. There are big, long clamps that can do that. I can't do that, but I can put a clamp right up next to it. And because this one is stopping this one from moving, if this is pushed right into it, it's going to do a pretty good job of keeping this nice and flat here. And I'm pretty much even on my heights. So I am going to now go ahead and drill into this one first. And then we'll start screwing it in. Theoretically, we will start screwing it in. Okay, gotta hold the back of this. All right, that went well. Okay, let's just go ahead and add the other screws here. And yeah, this piece can still move around a lot. That's okay. We're just trying to make sure that this is going to be sitting flat on the wood piece below it. And once we have these attached, when we attach the other side, then it will stop moving around on us. Okay. I think now we'll actually go ahead and look to kind of bring this off the edge, because our height is set now. It's resting on this. So now I'm going to clamp this one down. And when I do, I want to make sure this is flat and the edges are lined up as much as possible. Looks good. Lock that in. And now we can do a couple holes on this side. Okay, and we're just going to get the other screws done here. Shouldn't be able to move too much on us anymore, so I'll drill 2 at a time. And then the last 2 on the side. Okay, one more. All right, then we're going to spin it around. We're going to do the same thing on this side. So I want this clamped down to the table because I want it to be flat on the edge of this. Probably somewhere around here is fine. It's close enough. Okay, and this will make it flat. And when that's flat, I guess I'll clamp. Well, I got to clamp on this side, otherwise I have nowhere to drill. Again, just try to center that plate. Okay, and as long as we square that up before we attach the other side, we'll be all right. So let's start attaching here. Guess we'll just finish this one up. Maybe not, because the clamp is going to be in the way. Yep, got to move the clamp. All right, that's fine. We can do the last one. All right, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to clamp this back down. Make sure you're lined up and nice and flat on both sides. Make sure you're also pushing in so that there's not so much of a gap there. And this clamp is holding it flat on the table and holding the bracket in place. I guess my only problem is if I'm doing it this way, I have to really make sure not to drill too deep because the table's underneath again. And I kind of know where on here, like if you put it on the side, right, you can see that once it gets past the cutting edges, right, that is still not into the table. So as long as I stop when I still see a little bit of the flutes, that's what I'm doing. Just going really slowly. Once we get this first one in, though, we can move it. We can go ahead and move it off the edge of the table and kind of get a clamp on that side instead to hold it down. Although I do want this board on top too, so maybe it will be more like this. All right, that should give me one more hole to drill. All right, and then at this point, it is going to end up where it ends up. So we might as well do the last two screws here. All right, and now the moment of truth. Can this fit on top of the robot or not? All right, and this is going to come, when you put your bumpers on, they're going to go over the top of everything, and everything should be narrower than the bottom because that is actually the rules of the competition. And It is a little tight in that corner on the front here, but it goes. Okay, so that will work. A little bit looser probably would have been better because it'll be a little bit easier to put it on and take it off. So in that case, you can, I mean, on your second set of bumpers, I guess you can do this. You can move these out a little bit. So you see how our boards are perfectly lined up? If we need more width, you can have this board be just a little bit past this board, and that's going to be OK. And you can also cut the boards a tiny bit longer. All right, we're going to further reinforce this by adding these plates across the top. And we're going to do one of these in all four corners here. Then we're going to flip it over and do a set on the other side. Okay, and since we're only drilling into the wood and not the metal on the top, you can probably get away with just holding this in place and drilling in and screwing it in. But it probably doesn't hurt to throw a clamp on when it's in the right spot. A clamp or two. I guess I'll do two. I'll do one on this side, like that, and one on this side. With the clamps, at least you know it's not going to miss. Okay, and I think I want to go over just a little bit more. I really want to put this in the center, as centered as I can. That looks good. Okay, and I talked about last time you could potentially not drill first. On this one, because we're going into the side of the plywood, if you don't drill first, there's a really good chance it's going to split apart. So make sure you are doing the drill this time. Okay, and if your heights are a little bit uneven, this plate should bend a little bit and go down nice and flat for it. Okay, let's do the other two. All right, and I'm just going to do the exact same thing on the other three corners here. All right, so those are done. We're going to flip it over now, and we've got 4 more of those corner brackets. So once again, I'm going to line one up on each corner, following the same process I did on the other side, and drill and screw them all in as well. Okay, all 4 of them on this side are done. All 4 of them on this side are done. Okay, so we should be ready to move on to wrapping this with pool noodles. So let me get the pool noodles. You're going to need some tape as well, and we'll be back. Okay, next step is the pool noodles. And the way it's going to work is we're going to have 2 pool noodles that sort of like go around the whole outside of our robot. Now, there are lots of different ways that you can do this to join the pool noodles. I got these pool noodles secondhand, and it looks like the team that used them or set them up put 45-degree cuts in the corner. So these would join up in the corner like this. That's one way to do it. We're going to do it a little bit differently, though, because sometimes it's hard to make those cuts line up. So what we're going to actually do is we're going to take the pool noodles. We're going to start on one side of the frame, and we're just going to wrap them around the corner like this. Then we can join them on the sides where it's straight. But the entire thing, right, the whole bumper thing, is going to have pool noodles that are sort of paired together. We're going to have 2 pool noodles stacked on top of each other. So the first step is get some tape, duct tape, whatever kind of tape. I have duct tape. And we are basically going to bundle these pool noodles up into pairs of 2. And since we're going to be cutting the non-straight edge here, I don't have to worry about getting it lined up too perfectly on that side. Actually, I don't really have to worry about it getting too perfectly lined up on either side. But let me set this box down for a second. I know the pool noodle rolled on top of my tape. All right. So what I'm going to do is just somewhere close to the end here, stick that down. Then take another one. I'm going to try to line them up so they're even. And stick that one down too. And then just bring the tape around and around. Okay, and you really don't want to be crushing the pool noodle much here. We're just trying to stick them together. Right? And the first one on each set of noodles is the hardest. So now we should be in better shape for the next one. I think I'm going to do, on a length that's this long, I'm going to do maybe 3 of them. Now I can just stick it on though. Okay, so tight but not crushing the pool noodles is what we're looking for. Let's do one more. Somewhere around there. We know we're going to cut this down, so I'm trying to keep it to where it's going to show up. All right. And before we tape the other ones, let's go back and look at this one. I think it depends on the size pool noodles that you have, right? So we have to go all the way around the outside of this box. And this box is, again, it's that 23 and 13/16 by 30 and an eighth or so. If your pool noodle, like if you take your pool noodle and you line it up so it starts on one corner, if you can bend it over and make it around the next corner to the other side here, then you can probably do it with 2 pool noodles. Mine are not long enough for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end up basically making 4 pieces that go around the same amount. So I'm going to do half of this side plus half of this side. And you can be off center. You can do like 3/4 of this side and half of this side. That's fine too. But basically, we just need to make it all the way around. And I think the easiest way is if I make them all the same. So if I do that, right, I can kind of even eyeball it. We'll probably cut them to fit as we go. But the middle of this is, we'll just eyeball it. The middle of this is somewhere around here. So like that's roughly where I'm going to cut those pool noodles. So now that I know where the general spot is going to be, we're going to make 4 sets that look like that. I'm going to set one more tape set inside of that line, just because I want to make sure that they don't start coming apart after we cut them. So I'll do one more that is inside of that cut line. All right. And this is the side that I think I'm not going to use. All right, then I'm going to get a second set of pool noodles here. And if I line up the flat ends, right, then this mark is going to be pretty close to where I'm going to want to be on this one. And that's not the mark we're going to use to cut it, but that is the mark I'm going to use to put the tape. So I can make sure that I have 3 good pieces of tape. All right, so set this one aside. Now, the process I did here, we're going to do it again, except we're not really worried about taping. We're not really about taping anything past our line there. So I'll start with one on this end. And I'll take one of my pool noodles and just kind of stick it on there. Take the other one, line it up, stick it on there. Bring the tape around. Tight, but not squishing the pool noodle too much. And then now I know there's my mark. So we need another one over there somewhere. So like that. I'm going to leave some space because then if I cut it a little shorter or a little longer, it's going to be just fine. And I'll do one more in the middle. All right, so this process we are going to do 2 more times. So again, mark the spot, line it up, get 3 pieces of tape on. All right, let's go ahead and we kind of made this mark. Let's double check it really quick and make sure we're happy with it. So again, I want to be starting somewhere around the middle of this one, and I want to end up somewhere around the middle of this one. I can't see the mark because I did it upside down, so we'll do it this way. And that looks pretty good to me. So we're going to go ahead and cut these pool noodles off right at that point. And there are lots of different ways you can do this. I think you can eventually get through with scissors. You can definitely do it with a razor blade. Which is working pretty well. First, then we gotta kind of snap it. Okay, that works. Also, the bandsaw works pretty well for this, and sometimes you can get straighter cuts, although that didn't look too bad. Maybe next time I'll use the T-square to try to keep it really nice. All right, now these need to get attached to the frame, basically the way we were talking about. So I'm going to line this up so it's about in the middle. And it doesn't matter too much, right? Only the last one we're going to have to be perfect with to get everything to line up. And this time we're going to go around maybe a few times. I don't know. I kind of like having the piece of tape separate, but if you want to do it right from the roll, that is also okay. And I'm going to go basically all the way around this noodle. And you want to keep the noodle as centered on the wood kind of as you can. Okay, and again, it should be tight, but not like crushing the noodles flat tight. So you really don't want to, you're not really allowed to, in the rules, you're not allowed to squish the noodles down. But you want that to be really nice and secure on there. And we're going to do this a few times. So I'm going to do several of these tape around the wood frames here. I think once the first one is on, though, everything else gets easier. Okay. We'll tear that off. Remember, all this is going to get covered in fabric, too. Then, in the corner, we want to be right on it in the corner, because that's going to help support our bend that we're about to do. Okay. Then, this probably helps if you have another set of hands, but we're going to have to bend this around the corner and then tape it up. And I'm going to use a clamp to kind of hold it in place. Okay, so right at the corner, I'm going to come around. To get that to hold. Okay, and then on this side, maybe we'll do it towards the end here. All right, so that's the first one attached. And then we're going to join this one up right next to it, and we'll start taping this one down. We'll bring this one around, and then somewhere on this side, wherever we feel like it, we'll go ahead and cut that one off. Okay, so just enough to get me started here. And when you're doing this, go ahead and bring those pool noodles in. Make sure they're kind of wedged together. We don't want any gaps in the pool noodles there. Okay, so nice and flat there. Let me see. Probably use a little bit. more tape to hold that on. Okay. Also, looking back at this side, this looks like it's still popping up a little bit, so I'm going to just do one more piece of tape here. Kind of pull it down the rest of the way. That. All right, then moving on to this one again, trying to keep it centered. You can just kind of feel where center is. I'll do another one here. And then one more right in the corner. Uh-oh. There's some pretty sticky duct tape. All right. And around the corner. Okay, then this one is going to come around this side. And we're just going to keep taping. Pretty good. Okay, now let's look at where we want to cut this one off. And I mean, it looks like we'll cut it just after where that tape is. And I guess since I started taping this on, we'll just go ahead and cut it in place with the razor blade here. This might be a little harder. And they do make the really long razor blades. They're the ones that you can slide out. Those are probably even better. But we're just trying to cut straight through all of our pool noodles here. Okay, pretty flat, looks good. All right, we're halfway done. We're going to repeat that process 2 more times. Let me get one more ring of tape on here, though. Right at the end. Okay, next piece. We are looking to join this one up as tightly as we can to the previous one. And if that crushes the pool noodle a little bit, that's okay. Let me get a piece of tape here ready. So I'm going to squish them together, get my tape started. Back around, that looks good. Okay, and another bit of tape. And we just keep going. And I'm probably overdoing it a little bit on the amount of tape wraps that I'm putting on, but I do feel like the more you make sure everything is controlled and held in place, the easier the next step is going to be. Okay, one more for the corner. Maybe I'll start this hanging down. I'm gonna bring it around the corner. Squish it into place. Actually, let's go ahead and cut it first. So it does look like, I don't know where our mark was right next to the tape, and that looks pretty close to me to the center here. So yeah, we'll cut it right there, try to make it as straight as possible. And one more piece of tape just to make sure we're holding the very end in place. All right, then we have our last one, which again, we are just going to squish up as much as we can. That looks good. Let me get a piece of tape ready. This one's definitely easier if you have a second or third person helping, so keep that in mind when you're sending people off to build bumpers. Squished in there. Okay, let's try the corner first. When we bend it, Okay, this one's probably not necessary, but I'm going to feel better with the extra piece of tape here. All right, now we have to bend this one in. And we need to sort of measure where we want to be to cut it off. And one of the things is, if it's slightly too long, we can sort of compress the bumpers a little bit and make it fit. So if anything, if you bring it over like this, and you see where the edge is, so I'm coming around, that's nice and tight to where it is. So the edge is here. I'm probably going to cut here, just a little bit farther out. And you can cut even farther out and work your way in. We can always trim it down, right? We can always make it shorter if it doesn't fit. And this is coming up really close to the mark that we made, so that initial mark was pretty good. All right, so if we bring this over and we squish it in, yeah, I think that's going to be okay. You can probably shave a tiny bit off. So I'm going to go in the middle of the line I just made. And it looks like I cut the bottom one shorter than the top one to begin with. So maybe the bottom one is actually just good. Okay, that feels slightly better when I squeeze it in, but I think it would have worked either way. All right, so that means we are ready now to, once again, add more tape. Then I'm going to just squish these in. Let's see, I guess where that ended up, the bottom could use a tiny bit more of a trim. Basically, if I had finished the trim I started before instead of giving up, it would have probably been perfect. All right, and we can force those in. So we got a good seam there, no big gap. And then we can finish taping. Okay, that is the pool noodles done. Next step is to get out the fabric, and we're going to have to cover this with fabric. All right, next step is to get the fabric. Basically, you need fabric that is going to be able to go all the way around your whole thing. So mine is about 15 inches to go all the way around it. So you need something that is 18, 20 would be okay. Looks like the roll of fabric that I have here is 18 inches. So you could probably do a little bit less than that and still make it work. But that's probably about the right number. And then this fabric has two different sides. It has sort of a matte side and a shinier side. And again, your fabric may be different. I think you could actually attach this facing either way, but I'm going to do the prettier color on the outside. So here is what we're going to try to do. We are going to take the whole frame and stick it up like this. So we're starting on the long side, but towards the end of the long side. We definitely don't want to be in the corner. And the idea is we're going to wrap this all the way around and overlap by a little bit. And that is going to determine where we cut our fabric. But in order to keep this from moving and to be able to pull it nice and tight, we are going to want to staple it in place. And before we do, though, I think it does help to unroll the fabric kind of around the side like this. And I'm going to let this kind of hang off. I'll let that go all the way down to the ground. And the idea of what I'm trying to do here is I want to make sure that I have the fabric sitting pretty even. So I can measure kind of the distance on this side, which is about 6.5. And if I measure on this side, I'm 6 3/4. So I'm maybe 1/8 of an inch off of center, which is not bad. I could slide over just a tiny bit. But I also want to make sure that it stays square. So when we come up through this corner, am I still kind of aligned nice and straight? And so I'll take a measurement maybe up here somewhere. And it looks like it's off just a tiny bit. So I'm going to want to kind of pull this through and adjust it down at the bottom to match. Okay, that looks closer. See how we're doing down here. Still pretty good. Okay. And I'm also just kind of looking at it. I want it to look like, it's because if I attach it here and I staple it on a curve, then it's going to keep curving through the whole thing. So this to me looks pretty straight as I kind of follow it up and around. So I think we're in a decent spot. So the next step then is to basically fasten this so it doesn't move on us. So I'm going to bring one end up like this and staple gun it. And I want to have that come up pretty much straight up on the wood here, right? So you can also tell if you're in good spot because the gap here between this and the edge of the wood should be the same most of the way around. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and just pop. I'm going to pop a couple staples so it doesn't move. I'm going to turn the staple gun on, and then I'm going to pop a couple staples so it doesn't move. And this one has an adjustment too, so that staple didn't go in all the way, so I'm going to turn it up a little bit. That one also didn't go in all the way, but that happens. If this happens to you, this is a little bit harder because there are pool noodles on the bottom cushioning it, but you can just hit it with a hammer to sink them the rest of the way in. Now, these first ones actually we might have to take out, or we will have to take out, so that was not necessary. But, you know, here we are. Okay, and this one, when I pull this one up, I want to make sure that it is right along that edge of where the first one was. And I want it to be very tight. So I'm going to pull it through as much as I kind of can here. Pull it up right along that edge. And then I'm going to add some more staples. All right, so that should do a pretty good job of holding it in place. Then we are basically going to roll this all the way around until we get back to where we started. And you can see there's some adjustments that need to be made, trying to keep it centered. It doesn't actually have to be perfectly centered because we have all this extra fabric, so as long as we can wrap the whole thing in fabric, we're happy. Now, on this step, what we want to do is we really want to grab onto, I have all this stuff in my way here. Let's kind of slide it all out of the way. All right, you really want to be able to grab onto this fabric and pull it tight like this. Okay, so just make sure that we have gotten the fabric as kind of as tight as you can get it by hand. All right, and then what we're going to look to do here is secure this end. And so I'm going to bring this one up. I want it to overlap by a bit. I don't know, let's say 5 inches. 4 or 5 inches seems fine. So I'm going to have this nice and tight. I'm going to bring this end up. And somewhere down here, closer to the corner, is where I'm going to pop some staples to hold this one in place. Right, and then we're going to do the same thing on the other side, bringing that one up. And I'm pulling it very tight around like that. And then just another couple staples to hold it. And if you're trying to save every last inch of this fabric, we can mark it where we want to cut the fabric, which is going to be somewhere around, right, I don't know, maybe somewhere around here. That's where we would want to cut this fabric. Okay. So you could wait until we take it off, or you could try to cut right on that line. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it a little bit further out just to get rid of this excess, so it's a little bit easier to see what's going on here. Okay, yeah. No, I'll just leave it for now. I think it'll be fine. Okay, so our next question then is, we have this stuff set up, and we know we're going to sort of be pulling this fabric around this way. Something like this. We're going to have to do some stuff in the corners, of course, to make it look good. Right? And then the top is going to pull down around everything like this as well. And we can kind of see what's happening, right? Like we sort of have bumpers happening. Now, what we need to do in this position, when we're here, what we need to do is we need to figure out where we need to put our team numbers. So you have to have team numbers on the bumpers. They have to be on all 4 sides of the robot. And there are some rules as to how big they need to be. Now, we have our stencils. So let me grab that stencil pack and just some tape. Okay. And there are a lot of stencils here. We got letters and everything too. All right. So our goal with this is, since we know that all of these stencils, regardless of whether they are your team number or not, are sort of the same height. It's a little bit, I guess it is a little bit better if you find your team numbers. And I'm going to do 4 digits because I think most team numbers now are 4 digits. So you don't really have to pop the stuff out, but it's kind of falling out, so I'm going to go ahead and help it. So I'll add a 0 to the team number here, just so that you can see how we're going to do to make it fit for more team numbers. And basically, the idea is we have 2 choices here. We want to know where the center line is, right? Because we want to be able to go and spray paint these numbers onto the bumper so that you can see them. These numbers are pretty big. They cover, it looks like, just about all of the pool noodle. The other ones that I had, they're these iron-on ones, which are also great. In fact, these might be easier. They're probably more expensive. They are a little shorter, but they'll fit on there as well. So we have to basically lay out where our team numbers are going to go. And then we'll be able to take the fabric off, go ahead and spray paint the team numbers on, cut this down to the right size, bring it back, and reattach everything. So I think if you have a pen that will write on here, I think they make fabric pens where you heat them up and then the writing disappears. You can definitely use that to mark everything. I don't have one of those, and I don't really want to put a bunch of Sharpie lines on the outside of the bumpers where they're going to show up. And so that's why I've just got some masking tape, and I think that's going to work quite nicely here. All right, so let's also look at, with a tape measure that I dropped on the ground. So you can see the front of the bumper, it's sort of like 5.5 inches, 5 3/8 inches or something like that. But that is, I guess it's a little bit less because it's sitting on some extra fabric here. So pretty close to 5, right? Because those pool noodles were 2.5, and I believe they're pretty close to that. So we could try to measure here, like the 2.5 inches on this. And you'll need to kind of pull the fabric a little bit tight for this to work too. And some of this too, it's like if you want your numbers perfectly centered, spend a little bit more time. You don't care if your numbers are up or down a little bit. It's not going to make your robot illegal. As long as you can read the numbers, you're in good shape. All right, so really what we need to do is just mark out where we want these things to go. And I think one of the easy ways to do that is if I just take the stencil here. And because we know wherever the stencil is, we are going to be painting over it. So we probably could put marks on the stencil as well, and let's see. Also, let's get the center of the side. So I have 4 numbers here. I guess I'll make my team number be 0. 4, 6, 9. There we go. And I think when we go out to spray them, we're going to put them all next to each other. And then what we can do from here is just make the distances the same to the sides of the robot. So right now, that is probably about 11 inches. And this is probably about 9.5. So it seems like we need to move this way almost a whole inch. Let's try again. It's a little over 10. And that is just about right. Maybe I went a tiny bit too far. Okay, so this is basically where I'm going to want to put them. So let me see. Where did I leave the tape? Here it is. So I'm going to take a piece of tape, and I'll put it right like this along the side. That's where my first one is going to go. Okay, and if I line them all back up with that tape, I guess they all don't have to stay as I'm doing this. All right, so you're there, you're there, you're there, and you would be there. So we're lining up to this last one now. And again, if I could just use a pen, this would probably be easier, but that's okay. All right, and then I think I'm going to aim for the center here. The center seems easy to find, right? You can sort of even feel the center between the two pool noodles. So I'm going to go ahead and put one of these down the center. All right, so this is the first place where we're going to put team numbers. Then I'm going to rotate the frame. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Then I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Then I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Same pattern. Just try to get your numbers centered. Mark out the space you need for them with either tape or a removable pen or chalk. And then we'll be good to disassemble this and start putting our numbers on. All right, so I have all 4 sides marked off with where I want my numbers to end up. And we're going to start disassembling this now. There is one thing we have to watch out for. So this first set we can just take off, these first 2 staples. And the best way to remove staples is, I don't know. You try to work a flathead screwdriver underneath it. And when it starts coming up, usually you can switch to the pliers. And sometimes like rolling the pliers a little bit will help pull it out. So you got to do that for both of these 2. Okay. Now don't do the next 2 yet. Well, we can do these 2. Sorry. Yes, do the next 2. Don't do the next ones after that, though. Try to get both of these started. So I was saying, too, I didn't have to adjust it to put them in all the way. All right. Now, don't do these ones. There's one step we have to do before we take this off, which is, look, we arranged all of the positions of our numbers based on this being attached to the frame in this spot. If we take it off, we're never going to know how to put it back. So what I'm going to do is we need a line here. And this is the line that we want to be attaching our stuff. And the fabric should attach here, should start here, and it should go this way. And also the fabric that should be attached, because we're going to have this, is going to be flipped around and all kinds of stuff, right? Should be this fabric here. So I'm going to do some marks along this edge so I know this is my edge. And I'm going to do an arrow that shows me it should wrap around the frame in this direction. Basically, all I'm trying to do is making sure I can put the fabric back in the same spot so after the numbers are on, they can actually be in the middle. All right, once you've marked that up, hopefully that was enough. We can start to take off the last of our staples here. Okay, that one broke off, but I think it's fine. We're not going to get too worried about that. If going, nope, doesn't seem like going under the fabric is better. And when you're pushing in like this, I guess watch where your second hand is, because it's easy to slip and smack into your other hand if you're not careful. All right, and we'll see if these will come out. If it breaks off and you can't pull the ends out, next best thing, just hammer them in the rest of the way. No problem. It's like it was never there. All right, this fabric is loose, so we're going to go ahead and remove it. And then kind of go towards the end. You're going to see this is basically where we have the line to cut the fabric here. And this line doesn't have to be super straight. Because all the ends are going to be tucked under, I guess, yeah, we kind of want this to be, I guess this will be showing in the end. So, you know, we can square up our scissor line here. aim for that. Okay, we can just... All right, so this fabric is extra. We'll get rid of that. And then this fabric is where we want to attach our numbers. Okay. Also, let's see where those marks were. You know what? It doesn't matter. I'm like trying to figure out if I had to put it right, the numbers right side up. It does not matter right now. Okay, so what we are now looking to do is if I take one of these, just because now it's much easier when the fabric is flat, I can take one of my things and we can mark the top and bottom if we need to. Well, really, we just need a top or a bottom here. So I'm going to just get that centered on the line. And now, okay, that is the edge. So it's easier for me to find the center when it was on the robot. But now we know where that edge is. And, you know, the other edge is going to be down here somewhere. So this is where we're going to put our stencils. So let's go ahead and put our stencils together. And remember, it doesn't have to be perfect, right? We're just trying to get somewhere in the neighborhood. I feel like it's going to be better if I tape these stencils together, right? Like, then I don't have to keep messing with them in between. I can reuse this tape. All right. Okay, so that's pretty much good. I'm about centered between my tape lines. I'm good up and down. So I'm just going to add a little bit of tape to keep this from moving. All right, and then really at this point, these tape lines don't matter, but okay. Now, we don't want, when we spray paint, to get anything else on here. So we want to cover up around this with something else. So I think I've got some leftover cardboard, which should make a good mask. So let me get some cardboard. We'll cut it out so it fits on top of this, and then we'll spray paint our first numbers on. Okay, while I was rummaging through the cardboard boxes, I found all of this stuff that a lot of our parts came packed in. And I think this is going to be perfect, too. So actually, if you had regular paper, computer paper, that would also work. We basically just have to give ourselves a margin for error here so that when we are spray painting, we don't, or I guess we're using great stuff. Is it still called spray, or Flex Seal? Is it still called spray painting? I don't actually know. But either way, the idea is I want to not get anywhere else on our stuff. All right, that looks good. So now when I spray paint, it's more or less only going to hit the spots we want. I think this is coming up a little bit now that I attach the paper to it, but yeah, think we're going to be okay. Let's give it a try, see how it turns out. Okay, and I don't see it explicitly on here, but you probably want to do this outside or in a well-ventilated area. I'll put a mask on while we're doing this, and then, hopefully we'll clear the area out quickly. All right, 8 to 12 inches. Here we go. Okay, that looks good to me. So ideally, you would let this dry a little bit and then remove the stencils. And then you can move on to your next one. Okay, so very carefully, I peeled all of the paper away. And it looks pretty good. I got a little bit of bleed through maybe, and I think I dragged across this, the last 9 a tiny bit. But it looks pretty good. I would suggest waiting for it to dry a little bit more before messing with it, especially the stencil. I tried to wipe it off. We're going to just keep plowing ahead and see if I can get all 4 numbers on here. When you're doing the next numbers, make sure they're all facing the same direction so that there is now a top and a bottom to this. All right, we're going to do the other 3 here, and then we'll join you after they're kind of on and dried a little bit. Okay, we finished spray painting everything. We tried to get it dry enough. I think we're pretty close. Incidentally, if you are in a rush to get your paint dry so you can go to your event, a heat gun will speed it up, or a hot room will speed it up over a cold one. But you'll see there are some. I did definitely touch it a few times. And we haven't done the prettiest job, but it will get the job done. Okay, we're going to start attaching this now. So I'm going to bring back the frame. And on the frame, we had our starting mark here. And I'm going to find that starting mark that we put onto the bumper fabric, which was the other side. There it is. So this, I guess, I need to flip all the way over. Ooh, now I really hope it's dry. Okay. So this was somewhere on here, lined up at about the line. Right, there we go, and there we go. All right. So this is where we need to be to start everything off again. And I think the one thing I could have done that I didn't do is I'm going to have to try to figure out how to get this back to about the same distance up and down. All right, and that's pretty close. Let me see. I can do the measuring thing that we did the first time again. So I'm at a little over 7. A little under 7. So we'll slide this over a little bit. And one more. Okay, that looks like that's got to be pretty close to center. So if we pull this up, yeah, that looks pretty good as to where it was before. And now we are going to just start stapling it back into place. Okay, so we'll pull this here nice and tight. And that's the key with a lot of this, is we just want everything to be nice and tight. Oh, got to turn it on. And for all of the ones that don't go in, this will keep the hammer around and knock them flat. All right, and then this one comes up. And we really want to pull this fabric as tightly as you can while doing this. All right. Let's go ahead and bring this around the way it's kind of going to look. And I think what we're looking to do here is I'm going to pull this one tight, and I'm going to work my way over towards the corner here. And then I'm going to pull this one nice and tight and come back across it. All right. And now, if we sort of set this down, let me go through and make sure this next section, the number is pretty well centered on there, which is pretty close. It might be off by a little bit, but that is not bad. Okay. So we are at our first corner here, and obviously we have too much fabric in this corner. Oh, that last staple I think is going to be a problem for me, so let me take that last staple out. Actually, probably this staple too is. Okay, but we'll do the top first. And essentially what we want to do here is, if I bring this over until it's flat, like this, we want to make a mark right in the corner here. You can sort of feel the corner. So if you bring this so it's running flat, we're going to make a mark in the corner. And you want it to be about 45 degrees from the corner, kind of going out this way. And we're going to cut there. And then going the other way, we want to do the same thing. So I think I put too many staples in, trying to get our beginning secured. Let me pop another one out here. Okay. Then for this one, we're going to kind of do the same thing, right, where I pull this up and flat. And we are going to have a mark here as well from the corner, kind of going out at 45 degrees. And then I think we want to connect these 2 points here. And it doesn't have to be perfect, just kind of as straight as you can. And that is where we're going to cut. So I'll get my scissors, and I'm going to cut on those lines, or about on those lines. Just because going through the corner, we need to ditch some of the extra fabric that we have that we're dealing with. Okay. And then down along the back line. All right, and then if we got it in the right spot, which I'm not sure if I did or not, this one looks good. The other one looks like I was not quite where I want to be, but that's okay. Okay, we're going to just kind of create a fold here. And then we're going to bring this end down, and we'll attach it as we go. And then we'll kind of do the same thing from the other side. And I think I didn't do this quite right, because I think if we do it exactly right, we end up with just one fold in exactly the corner, but that's okay. But before we start stapling here, we need to flip it over. We need to do the same thing, the same cutout on the other side, because once we start stapling it, it's going to be harder to get it lined up in place. Hold on. All right, and again, I'm just going to look ahead And make sure all the work we're doing is when this is in a good spot here. And yeah, we're going to have to take some of these staples out. Sorry, went too fast with the staple gun. Pop out 2 of these, I think. There we go. All right. So once again, let's pop out 1 more. Okay, so with this folded over flat, we are going to go from the corner here on about a 45-degree angle out. And we bring it over this way. I kind of want this to be in position here. In fact, I think let's go ahead and let's see if we're past this corner to where we can go ahead and bring this end around actually and get it connected here. I think we'll be a little bit in the way. Okay, so that's fine. Let's finish this corner up, and then we'll be okay. All right, so the corner is here, going out at like a 45-degree angle. And then we want them to be connected. Now we'll just cut them out. All right, so we're going to start with this first side here. And I'm going to pull this down basically as tight as I can get it here. And then go ahead and let's get 1 staple as close to the corner as we can. And then work our way across. Looks good. I kind of keep holding on to this, keep everything together here. Flip that back over. And I'm going to do the same thing now on this side, where I can really pull down nice and tight. And then let's get some staples across the top here. Keep pulling it down. Okay, and we can secure kind of the other ends of these too. Probably could have cut off some of this extra fabric as well, but it's going to be okay. All right. Now we are into the other side of the corner here. And what I can do is I'm going to just kind of fold this over. Let's see here as we pull it tight. And I think we want to fold it all the way to that corner where we cut. So let's see, before we do that, I'm going to pull this all the way around tight. I think that's what is causing us some problems in that corner still. All right, so we're going to want this as tight as possible, going all the way around. But we are also going to go through and we are going to adjust to make sure our numbers are in the center first. It looks like we let it shift quite a bit. Okay. Jeez. All right. This is definitely easier if you have a second set of hands. So that is strongly recommended. Okay. But we'll get there. All right. So I'm basically just trying to pull this tight all the way around, as tight as I can get it. And that's going to have to be about as tight as I can make it right now. So I'm going to pull down as much as I can here. And we're just going to try to anchor this one. So I'm going to go across the bottom of the fabric that we just had. Was in okay, and we need to pull this around tight in both directions. So I'm pulling down and I'm also pulling up and in. And we want to get that one down so it is nice and flat. All right. But I didn't quite center my numbers on that side. I'm going to go through and I'm going to center the other sides, though, before I move on. Okay. And if your side is too far off, mine is not too far off, you can loosen that and readjust it up. Okay. Now, I think that that is connected all the way around. We can go back to the corner we were working on, and we can finish that corner up. We got a lot of the slack out of this corner now. Okay. So we're going to fold this all the way over to our point, and then drag our point down. And we're going to pull down as hard as we can here, and start right in the corner. Wow, okay. None of them want to go in. Okay. All right, keep it tight. And we'll just sort of work our way along the top here. Okay, that's probably far enough because then we're going to have to do the next corner. And let's flip it over. And again, I'm going to fold it right to that point. And I'm going to do my best to drag that point in. Looks like I am a little short on this one. So might have had stuff shift. That's okay. Or I cut it a little short, which is possible too. But I think if I pull pretty hard and get that just about completely covered, and held in place. Okay, then what we might want to do is there's a lot of extra fabric here. So as long as we keep it nice and flat, it's okay, but also we could cut this. So especially if you're having trouble making it fit, it's okay to cut that. All right, but we are going to pull down on this side because we want it nice and tight around the outside of our pool noodles here. And we're just going to work our way across the top of this. And I will figure out a good way to make this work. Maybe we'll tip it up. Keeping it nice and tight. Well, that's a little better. Okay. And then, once we get the corner done, we might cut. Do we want to cut? Maybe not. I think it looks fine. Again, because we're not going back around. If this is bunching up on you, though, it is better to cut it and keep it nice and flat. Right? But right now, for me, it's sitting pretty flat here. So I think I'm okay with. Just kind of continuing on. Okay, now we are at another corner. So we are going to repeat the corner procedure. And I'm sure there are many, many ways to fold these corners in. So if you have a different way that works for you, go for it. All right, so we want to start right at the corner. And something like a 45-degree line out. And we'll fold this over the other way. To the corner. All right, cut the fabric. Right, and I like to cut both of the sides first before moving forward. All right, so there is the corner. cut again. All right, and since both sides are ready now, we can start to attach. I think I want to do the other side first, because that's been my inside thus far. So I'm going to bring that corner point down. And right, this was a slightly better position for it. So I really want to pull on this until I get the corner to the corner. And then we can work our way back from there. Okay, then this one we fold to the corner point and pull it down and tight here. Good. Then back to this side, which is pull it to the corner. And then one more like this. Maybe one more just to keep that part from moving. There we go. All right, then on this side of the corner, I'll fold this one over. Pulling it nice and tightly in here. It looks like I need to leave myself a little bit more room in future corners, but still totally fine. Looks good. See, we can go a little bit farther, especially since this is the long side. So I'm going to get this side nice and tight. And we'll just drop a few staples along the way. Guess it seems like I probably want to stop around halfway. Then the other side, and this one we really want to pull it through and tight. Out of staples. I'll do one more to match that one. All right, next corner. So like there, about 45 degrees. Your side, find the corner. Let's cut it out again. Flip it over. All right, so we want to do this side first. And all we're doing is pulling this until we get that corner lined up. Same as the previous ones. Make sure to keep pulling tight. This one. This side, pulling it in as much as we can. Then on this side, well, I was nowhere near the corner on this side. All right. Just pull that as tight as we can. Okay, last corner. Oh, I want to start on the other side. All right. That is good. And then this section will just okay. About as tight as I can make it. Jeez. Go in. Okay, so that is now completely wrapped. You can tell you want to keep it nice and tight, right? So the edges look a little bit crisp like this. That's as much for its function as its looks. If you have loose bumpers and stuff is sagging around, there's more ways for it to get caught in stuff. And you can see I did a pretty bad job of centering that number. So you want to take probably a little bit more time on the first step, but I got the other sides pretty good. Okay, so now this still has to fit on our robot. So let's bring this over to our robot, and we will drop this down from the top here. And let's make sure it still goes on, and it does. Perfect. That is a really nice fit. So our next question is now, how do we make this be attached to our robot permanently? Well, not permanently, but solidly, rigidly. So we're going to grab some of the parts we need for that, the bumper mount brackets, and we'll come back and put it together. All right, so we have these. These are the front and back bumper mounts from the kit. I believe you got them in the kit of parts. If not, you can get them from Andy Mark. And if you don't want to buy these, you can actually just make your own. You can probably actually use the bits that we cut off of the frame, and we'll talk about how you can do that on the sides as well. But the goal is we're going to have these on the sides of the robot, something like this, and the bumper is then going to be lifted up and attached to it. And we're going to do one here, we're going to do one here, and then we'll do two on the front of the robot. And assuming that is sturdy enough, then we're probably not going to bother attaching it to the sides, but I'll show you how you can add one pretty simple attachment point on the sides if you wanted to make your bumpers even stronger. Now, the easiest way to do this is to pre-mount these plates on the robot instead of trying to mount them to the bumpers and hoping everything lines up. So my first step is actually to take the bumper off, which is not super easy when it's on the table, but I think we can manage it. Perfect. All right. And we're going to go in and we're going to start mounting these brackets. And the way they mount, there are these really long, these are 1032 bolts here. And what's supposed to happen is these come up. I guess let me just go over here. These would come up from the bottom of the frame, which I have to lift up to get it to go in. And these will poke through the top of the frame. And then this will mount onto it like that. We'll attach to it like that. And then, in order to hold it in place, because remember, you have to change bumpers every time you change from red to blue alliance, which in the qualifying rounds could be every time you go out. You might have to switch back and forth. You don't want to have to get a screwdriver underneath here and then the socket on top and have to tighten them in. So what comes in this bumper kit are these wing nuts, which, assuming you can get them started, you can just spin down and sort of lock in by hand with your fingers. Okay, but we can actually make this process better. Imagine if every time you went to change the bumpers, instead of having to lift the robot up to pass this bolt in from the bottom, what if we just kept this bolt attached to the robot the entire time? Then you just come in, find the two bolts, lower the bumpers on, tighten the wing nuts, and you're ready to go. So that's what our goal is here. And we're going to do that by basically locking this in on the bottom of this angle here. When it comes up through, we'll put a regular nut there to lock it in, so it'll be attached to the frame of the robot at all times. All right, now to find out where these go, though, let's start on this side over here. And what we're looking at is our battery mount plate is the biggest obstacle back here. So we only have a little bit of room to attach this, and we want to be all the way over next to our battery mount plate. And I can already see right now there's not quite enough space. And that probably is because when the battery mount plate got tightened down, it might be shifted a little bit over. So I'm going to loosen these bolts up. that are holding this plate in. Okay. And I'm just going to have this nice and loose so it can move around. But really, I'm just going to push it as far away as possible. And let's see if this will actually line up with the holes. It's pretty close to lining up with the holes. So we should be decently good. But if you want to make it a little bit better, we know this edge is a little bit of a problem. So if I mark this edge right here, I can take it out of the robot, and we can take it over to the grinder, and I can just remove a little bit of that material just to give myself some more clearance. I think, again, if it's shifted all the way over, you should be OK. But again, anything that's kind of in the way of making a fast bumper change is not a good idea, because you're going to have to make a lot of bumper changes. So let's get this all the way out. And before I take the last one out, just because I remember where we put it, and we can count, and we can put it back, but I'm going to just say, hey, it goes in between these two lines. Now I don't have to think. All right, quick trip over to the grinder, and we'll have a little bit more clearance. All right, and because there's two holes here, really we can get pretty close to the edge of this hole. But I didn't want to break through the wall, so I kind of stopped there. Let's go ahead and reattach this. Remember, the tag goes facing up. And we'll just line it up with our lines. And I mean, I can see already I'm probably good, but did we grind far enough? Oh, just far enough. So I could have done a little bit more up in this corner, but I think we got just far enough that we're going to leave it. And actually, you know what? Before we put this in, I think our life, well, no, we need it in. It's going to just be hard for us to get the locking nuts that we talked about in the right spot. Okay, I'm going to leave this loose until we're done attaching our stuff. And so this is the goal. That is the hole we want to use. So that is this hole right here. So I'm going to bring this up from the bottom. Again, we're going to try to line it up with that particular hole. So I think on the bottom, it is the hole closest to the inside rail, the side rail. Okay, and that would go through, but we can't just drop it in yet. Nope, we got to get a, and this is one of the rare instances where I will say we should get a non-nylock nut. So this one does not have that plastic on it. This is just a regular nut. And the idea here is, man, we got to screw it down a long bolt to get all the way down to the bottom. And if you were trying to do that with a nylock, it would take all day. So wherever you can get to this bolt, however you can get to this bolt, maybe I'll reach through the battery mount. That works the best for me. I'm just going to start that nut onto this very long bolt here. And then usually you can just kind of flick at it to make it spin quickly. And if I slide this up, I think it was that hole. But I'm going to spin that nut all the way down until it's kind of locking on the bottom of this channel on the outside of the robot. And it's not terrible. You could go in and get a screwdriver, Phillips screwdriver, and a wrench on the inside. So it's just locked. Finger tight is kind of enough. Even if it rattles around, it's fine because it won't be able to fall out of the robot. And the wing nut will tighten it when it's in final position. But that one is in, and you can see that bolt now is not falling out. So that's what we're trying to do there. Now, unfortunately, the next one is going to be even harder. But a little bit of struggling now is going to make your life easier for the rest of the season. All right, so we need this hole right here. That's the one. So one more nut. We're going to bring this up from the bottom. Let me go around. I'm going to have to go around anyway to find the, to try to get the nut in place. All right, is that the right one? And you want to double check these when you put them in because you can sometimes go on an angle and go through the wrong hole, but you will see it is definitely pointing on an angle when it goes through there. Now, somehow we have to reach in here, around the wheel, around all of the other stuff we have, and try to get this started, this nut started. So sometimes it works best if you hold the nut on the inside here and line it up with the hole that you're going to use, and then start the bolt going through. Because then you can spin the bolt to get it to move, and your finger on the inside is just holding it in place. Sometimes you can also put it on a wrench and get the wrench in there to line up. All right, did I pick the right hole? I'm going to be sad if I didn't. I did. So now we've got to tighten that nut all the way down to the bottom. I just went the wrong way and made it fall off. Let's try again. Okay, we're getting there. Okay, that is definitely the right one. And that is decently tight. All right, so this will go on now. Perfect. And I want to hold it in place, so we are going to actually tighten on the wing nuts. And you do have to hold the bolt on the bottom if you want them to get very tight, but I want it to be a little bit loose just so that we can align it to our bumpers here. Okay, so our holes on the top, it was 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth hole in from the outside, right next to our battery attachment here. And then we're going to do the same thing now on this side. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 holes in, and that's where we're going to put this bolt. And don't forget the nut to get started in there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that one, I don't know, couldn't get it started. Let's try a different one. One, two, three, four, five. All right, it's started. Now I just got to spin it the rest of the way down. Okay, that's pretty good. Again, it probably is worth making sure those stay tight so you never have to do this again, but you know. And now that I put this one in 5 in from the outside, I'm just going to use the plate to kind of find the other hole that it's going to be attached to. So right here. This one's a little easier, so let's go up from the bottom. Okay, that's the right hole, and let's get the nut started. Okay. Switching hands was the right choice. All right, that's started. Now we just spin that nut as fast as we can down to the bottom. All right, then this plate goes on, and the wing nuts. Keeping it a little loose. All right, and then we're going to do the exact same thing now on the front of the robot. So the only thing you have to know, we're going to do both sides of the front. If you hit the wooden board, you'll have to drill the hole out. Otherwise, it's going to be 5 holes in, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then use the bracket to find your next spot. I think this is really hard to reach. All right, there we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. reach that, just barely. Okay, that one hits the wood, so grab a 3/16 drill bit here. And it's going to be this hole right here. And it's not long enough. Okay. So 1, 2, 3 from there. All right, so we got to tip this back just enough. Get our drill under here. And it is this hole, I think. One hole, we skip one hole from the bolts that are there. I think that's going to be the right spot. Okay, and you should, of course, check that there's no electronic stuff on the other side. And you'll have to decide whether you think I checked or whether I got lucky, but I didn't hit anything. All right. Let's get this one screwed in. Bracket on. Again, also make sure the outside, oh no, I missed that was not the right hole. Undo it. All right, so now we know. It is the hole right next to the other bolts. So when we tip this back, so right next to those bolts, that's the hole we need. Oh, and that seems fine. Okay. And on this side, right next to it, that's the hole we need. And that seems fine too. So I think the slots that we drilled just about cleared that for us. Okay. And the wing nuts go on, and we do this one more time on the last corner. All right, let's do the hard one first. Can I reach this way? Almost. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's got to be about there, and I can roll this kind of off the front here. Be able to screw it in. Yeah, that was better. That was definitely better. Took us till the fourth one to figure out how to do it. Okay. And then this one is going to be, again, right there, which should be the hole we drilled. All right, and then the last bracket and the wing nuts. I think I lost the wing nut. Maybe I didn't bring it over. All right. And again, make sure these brackets are all a little bit loose. And we're going to go ahead now and bring the bumper back in. And we're going to drop this bumper over the top of the robot. And down. Got to make sure it's going evenly or it will not stay. Okay. Now, our goal is to lift this up a certain amount and to screw those brackets into the bumper. It does look like those brackets are a little bit off the edge, so we'll see how that works out. We may or may not need to actually, we can open up the holes on these brackets in order to give them more room to move around. All right, so the next trick is our bumpers, when they're attached, need to be in the bumper zone. And the bumper zone, I believe, is like 7.5 inches from the ground. And what we can do is if we check from the ground here, we can measure to our plate. And the top of our plate is about 7 1/4. And remember, our robot can rock forward, so it's a little bit less, or it can rock back. And if it rocks back, it gets pretty close to 7.5. It's probably 1/8 under. So I think our goal is to attach this, okay, so that the bumper is just about 1/4 inch or a tiny bit below the top of these bumper mounts. So we just don't want any part of our bumper to be above that top edge, because that top edge we know is legal by a little bit. And if we mounted our bumpers up like this, they would be outside of the bumper zone, and it would not work. So how do we get our thing kind of held in the right spot? And that's not entirely obvious to me. Let's see if we can get some clamps on here. We might be able to get some pieces that we wedge underneath that are the right height. That could also work. But let's try, just going to leave a little bit, and then we'll put the clamp on. And we'll hope the pool noodle can support the clamp. Yeah, okay. I can get with that. That's working. So just a little bit below the top surface here. And we'll see, it's hard to tell. I think I want to go probably a little bit lower, because it looks like the pool noodle is a little bit higher than the backing board. So I'm going to shift it down just a tiny bit. That seems good. We'll shift this one down that same tiny bit. And let's see. For those of you who want an actual measurement instead of down a little bit from the top of the bumper bracket, the wood, if I push down on the wood here to the top of that bracket, looks like I'm about 1/2 inch from the wood to the top of the bracket. Wait, that doesn't sound right. I'm about 1/8 inch from the wood to the top of the bracket. That sounds right. So about 0.125 down seems to be a pretty good spot. 0.2, probably okay. All right, let's lift the back ones up and see if we can get them in the same spot. We'll clamp those in as well. Okay. And the back ones are definitely bending in for me. They don't just immediately touch. Some of that is probably my warped wood that I started this with, but we will do something to fix that too if we have to. Okay, that's pretty close on this side. And pretty close on that side. Just do a little measurement and see if we're in the ballpark. Yeah, 0.18 and that one's a little low. That one's 0.23, so we'll bring that one up just a tiny bit. Okay, 0.14. That's good enough. Now, we are ready then to attach our bumpers to our bumper brackets. And so to do that, we're going to go back to the small drill bit. I'm going to use the 5/64 that we had out earlier. These screws are a little bit bigger than the ones we used earlier, so you could go with a tiny bit long or bigger drill bit if you needed to. And all we're going to do is drill. There are a bunch of holes back here on the backing. Just pick one, drill into the center of it. And then we're going to take the wood screws that came with the bumper kit here. Got a bunch of those. And we're just going to screw it in. Okay, nope, we got to try again. So when that attached, it pulled this way up above the top of that bracket, and that is not going to work for us. All right, so I think I'm going to focus on, what am I going to focus on? I think I'm just going to clamp the front ones in place, because it looked like when I attached the back ones, it made everything really shift on me. So let's get the front ones good again. And then we'll see. All right, 0.12. You can go a little lower. This one's only 0.8. .15. Okay, that looks good. Let's go ahead and try. This time I'm going to use a different hole because that hole might be close enough that it's a problem. And it also looks like the top holes maybe aren't the best for this. So I'm going to start with one of the bottom holes because that for sure gets into the solid part of the bumper. That wing nut. There we go. That stayed below. Now I'm happy. All right. Let's see if we can get one more on this side. That end one's going to be really hard to get to, so I'm going to go to the middle one here. Okay, so theoretically with those two screws in, this mount is secure. Let's get this other mount on. the clamp all the way over to the end, although actually at this point, this bumper is basically not going anywhere because we have 2 here, 1 there. We are solid. So let's do the other one that we can reach here. Okay. So the front ones are on and good. We're going to add more screws probably just to make sure they stay good. Let's look at the back ones now. This is kind of where we were talking about. We're going to run into some problems on the back ones because they're so far away from the brackets. But let's see what we can do. So I think, we've got a pretty big gap here of, it's an easy way to measure that gap. Let's go through one of the holes. So it's 0.35 minus 0.12. So you have like a 0.2 inch gap on mine. If yours just fits, excellent, good job. If not, it looks like we're going to need a little bit more spacing on these bumper brackets in order to get everything to line up and connect the way we want it to. So at this point, what I think we're going to do is remove the bumper brackets from the robot. So I'm going to take the front one off here. And we should be able to or we won't be able to. Okay, so that is another bit of a problem, but we'll solve it. All right. So this is also tipped. All right, we're going to try to solve all of our problems, hopefully. Let's get this off of the robot. And here are the problems. Number one, these holes are catching on the bolts when I try to take it in and off, just because of the angles that things are at. And we need to be able to move these plates out, these bumper mounts out farther to be able to connect with the bumpers on the back as well. And so what I think is, what we can do is we can increase the size of the holes on these bumper brackets. So right now I think they're 3/16. I'm going to make them, let's go to 1/4 inch. Okay, so I'm just going to re-drill these to make them bigger. And we're going to do these ones as well. Let me go ahead and clamp them to the table so it's a little safer. Okay, let me deburr those holes a little bit. Well, they're really not too bad. These ones aren't too bad. These ones maybe are a little bit worse. All right, let's try again and see if it got any better. Should to knock off the aluminum shavings. We do not want them going inside the robot if we can help it. Those are so close to fitting. But not quite. I think when we pull this end up, we're going to be too tight again. And my guess is these ones are still not going to reach our bumper back here. All right. Let's go one size bigger. Well, is there something else we can do? We can think about this. The only other thing we can do is we could try to space these off the bumper more if we added a plate or a shim in here. But I don't know that I have anything good to do that with. So let's try going a little bit bigger on these holes. And if we go too big for the wing nuts, we can always add washers. All right, so I was at 1/4 inch. Now I'm going to try 5/16. Okay, that was a little bit of my clamp. Okay, let's try again. Okay, so that side is good. This side, it's still not even close. That is miles away. Let's see where we are. So right now, if we go all the way out, we are still 0.43 minus, what was this? 1.3. We're still like 0.2 of an inch away. So we need like 1/8 of an inch on both sides. Okay, all right. So basically what you need to do is you need to see if your gap here is good or not. And it looks like it's a little bit big because this can only stick so far off the end of our bumpers. Like if I attach this to my bumpers, there's no way it's going to hit the marks we need it to hit. We can't turn it and use it the other way very easily because it doesn't really fit in the space we have. So looks like we need to add something to our bumpers. All right. So in like this area here, and in this area here, and then basically right where these are attached, we'll have to add some spacers of some kind. All right, let's see what we've got to do that with. All right, so what we did was we checked to see kind of how much space there was in between this bumper and the back plates. And turns out, I guess we really want to keep this propped up, but it turns out it was about the thickness of the 1/4-inch plywood that we used to make the belly pans out of. So that's material that hopefully you have, so you can do the same thing if you run into the same problem. And I guess now, got the bumper, I guess you want to really get this bumper mounted up. Yep, okay. So it probably helps the whole time if you can get your bumper at the right height to begin with, and it's just sort of supported there. Mine starting on a little bit of an angle was probably not the best move, but we'll see where we go from here. All right, so we're going to reattach these onto the robot. Okay, leaving them loose is fine. Okay, and I am going to, let's loosen these ones up too, just a little bit. Okay. That is good. You want everything nice and free again, so we can line this up and drop it on. And then on this side, looks like we have to get higher than whatever I was at. That looks pretty close, actually. Wait, nope, too high. Because the bumper has to be below these brackets by just a little bit. That doesn't seem too bad. So if we put these spacers in between, that lines it up nicely. Now it's touching. Okay. And check this side as well. Yep, and that is pretty good as well. So now we got to readjust our bumper height on this side until we're in the bumper zone that we want to be in. I'm using my tape measure as a shim right now, so let's just make sure. Remember, it's got to be below 7.5, and those look like they are. Looks like we're just about in the right spot. Let me see. If I bring this up so it's flat on the top here, then we can measure this. Okay, that was a little bit taller than the ones in the front, but not too bad. This one is almost right on. So I think we just want to be a hair higher. Oh no, come back. Come back, wood piece. Okay, so on my stuff that I've stacked under here, I'm going to go, well, we can clamp it up just a touch higher. All right, so I'm going to put the wood piece in. I'm going to line that up with my bracket that's there. And then we'll go ahead and get a clamp on this. All right, and that is just about there, 0.11. This is a little bit below that. Yeah, okay, that side's good. Let's do this side. And I need one more clamp. Let's see where we are on this side. 0.13, I'll take it. All right, back to the tiny drill bit so we can add our pilot holes. Okay, and in we go. If you have to take the wing nut out, that is okay. Looks good. Let's try to get the one on this side. Okay. I think we can take these off. Let's check now to see how our bumper zone is looking. 7.5. And we are just below 7.5. Say we're about 1/8 below on both of those spots. And on this side, we are 1/8. This one bump here might be a 1/16, but that's okay. It's close enough. All right, so let's add, I need one more screw on each of these. Okay, and the question is, can they be removed? Yay, they can be removed. Okay. then what I'm going to do when this is out, I'm just going to add some more screws. Probably get all 3 on the bottom, maybe just 2 on the top for all of them. And then we're ready to attach it to the frame of the robot for good and be done with bumpers. Well, in your case, you're going to have to do the same thing with a second set. So with your second set of bumpers, you can come back and put the 4 brackets on, bring the bumper down, try to level it out. I really like putting stuff underneath the bumper to try to even it out. And then when it's at the right height, under 7.5 inches, I think we're aiming for 7.25 to the top of the bumper, but if you're 7 3/8, that's okay. And then you can drill and attach the set of brackets on your blue bumpers. But since we're out of the frame here, or out of the robot, it'll be easier for me to get to these other holes. And feel free, if you want to do all 6 holes, it's fine. No big deal. All right, so I have this side done. I'm going to flip it around, do the other side really quick, and then we'll come back and put it back on the robot. All right, so we have the brackets now all attached. I did 5 screws on each one. I don't know, I didn't want to do the 6th screw. Feel free to do it if you want. Let's go ahead and put this on and see if it fits. And that's not too bad. A little tight in the front still, but I can kind of bump it in, and the back looks like it'll go when we tighten it down. So a couple things to keep in mind. One is this is the orientation I put it on and fixed all of my stuff to. So I'm actually not sure if it'll fit if we spin it around 180 degrees. Should we find out? Let's find out. So if I make the front the back, let's find out if it still fits. And yep, okay, it does. So that's good to know. My bumpers can go on in either orientation. If yours don't go on in either orientation, that's fine. Just label one side front, one side back, and you just always put them on facing the right way. All right, a couple other things that I'll talk about while I put all of these wing nuts on and get the bumpers actually tightened in place is that if you still couldn't get everything to line up and fit after doing the wood shims, you might have to add some more shims on one side or another. One thing that you can do, and I actually did on one of these brackets in the front, is if you take the bracket off, you can place washers on top of the holes. And then when you tighten the plate back on, or the bracket back on, the washers will be in between the plate and the bumper. And each washer will give you maybe a 1/16 of an inch or a 32nd of an inch. So I don't think it works too well to stack more than maybe 2 of them up. It starts to get hard to keep them in place, and it's just not really a good solution at that point. At that point, you want to go and find some other piece of metal or some other piece of wood that will fit. But if you're just off by a tiny bit, then washers are the way to go. I think tightening these wing nuts on, the holes in these plates probably also could have gotten a little bit bigger, but you have to be careful because we're starting to get to the back of the plate there. And we don't want to go too far back on the plate and end up losing the back hole of the plate, because then stuff can start to slide off. Also, if you didn't tighten your 1032 nuts very tight, you may still need to get a screwdriver on the bottom here. So going around and using a wrench and a Phillips screwdriver to tighten all those bolts that are going to stay on the robot that we did kind of at the beginning of this section, getting those nice and tight so they stay where they are is probably worth it as well. That's going to save you some time in the future. All right, we've got one wing nut left. And then we actually have one more thing that we have to go back and fix, which is I loosened this tray up, the battery tray up, to be able to make sure that my brackets fit. So I'm going to go back after I get this last wing nut in and tighten that tray back down. All right, that looks good. And the washers I used, they were just these number 10 washers. I think they're the same washers that I've been using to hold in all of our hex shaft, half-inch hex shaft. All right, let's go ahead and get this tightened. Okay, and as we finish this up, I think that is it on this robot. So if you built both your red and your blue bumpers, once again, I only built one color bumpers. Make sure that you are doing 2 sets of everything, which means you'll need 2 sets of all the shims, 2 sets of all the adjustments to make them fit. And again, take your time, spend some extra time making sure that the bumpers really drop on quickly, because you're going to have to change them a lot during the season. So these feel pretty secure, even on the sides, just because of the one-piece construction. I'm not too worried about it. There's a little bit of a gap on the sides, but in the corners it's nice and tight, and I think they're going to do the job. All right, so that is it. We have finished the bumpers. They're assembled. I think that was actually the last, no, not quite the last mechanical thing, because we will have to add more ballast. The bumpers are nice because they do add weight down low, but we're going to have to come back and add even more weight to it. But I think with the bumpers on, we are ready to move on to our next video, which is going to be autonomous programming. So I'll see you in that one. But before we go, as always, special thanks to Argosy and Everybot.